Hi everyone, so I hope everyone is having a great weekend. I'm a little slow in getting videos out to you this weekend because I have just been obsessed with Sandy Allnock's new Rainy Days Copic coloring class that was just released on Friday. So I have been home and just playing with all of the new lessons and making bunches of cards. So I'm going to show you how to make this card today, which is inspired in part by the class. Instead of a rainy day scene, I'm going to do a snowy scene, and I thought that was appropriate because how to make the rain and the water droplets and condensation, that's really that's Sandy's property. That's what she teaches in the class. And if you want to learn how to make a rainy version, I urge you to go check out the class. I think it's on sale right now for $13.99, and it's amazing. There's 5 different lessons. I've gotten through 2 so far. This one is called the window panes lesson, and it teaches you how to make like condensation and raindrops on a windowsill. So it's just so much fun. And the stamp that I used here is Honeybee Stamps Tea Time stamp set, and I just tried some no line coloring, and I will show you how I did the coloring of all these little objects in the video that follows. But before I got into that, I just wanted to share some of the cards that I made this weekend using the lessons in the Rainy Days class. So this one is from lesson 5, the windowsill class. This is my own version, and now I'll show you a couple others. So this is the first card that I made using lesson 5, which I just went straight to lesson 5. I didn't go all the way through. I just love the windowsill. And the coffee mug here, I did some no line coloring again with a stamp from Honeybee Stamps called Coffee Time. And I think this stamp, the sentiment comes from there as well. I tried the card a second time just because I thought there was a little too much green, and I wanted to have some more blue and purple show through. So this is my second attempt. And if you don't have this stamp, you don't need it. Sandy shows you how to make a coffee cup in the lesson, or any latte stamp that you have that's maybe about 2 inches high would work. So these are my projects from lesson 5. And then I also did a project from lesson 2, which teaches you how to make a downpour, and I just love this. And again, I paired it with a little Honeybee stamp set. This is the little pug from Seasonal Sweeties, and I just kind of put him as my focal point and learned how to make the rain here in Sandy's Rainy Days class. So if you want to learn how to make this card, I urge you to check out that class. And then I made a second version with the full Seasonal Sweetie stamp set by Honeybee Stamps, and this one has a little girl and her little pug, and it says, "We will weather this storm together." And I love that effect of the spotlight in the rain shower. It's just gorgeous. So anyway, with that, let's get started on the version that we are going to be making in today's video, which is the snowy scene. All right, let's get to it. All right, so we're going to start by stamping all of the images onto the page, and the ink that I'm using is Barely Beige ink by Simon Says Stamp. And I think I got my ink pad a little bit contaminated, so that's why you see a little bit of black. Normally it would just be like a beige color, but it worked for my purposes. So the stamps that I'm using are from Honeybee Stamps Tea Time stamp set. It was released maybe a 1.5 years ago, and this one, along with the Coffee Time stamp set, are some of my favorites, and I use them time and time again. So we're just going to draw in the scene behind our counter, and I just drew a little windowsill on an angle, and then I just filled it in with E40 because I want the wood on our windowsill to be really pale, and we will color in the wood grain later in the video. So now I'm adding some shadows around my objects, and I'm doing it now because they're masked off, so I don't have to worry about the ink bleeding in, and also because I'm going to work on the scene outside the window once I finish the shading here on the counter, which will give all of this ink a chance to dry before I get back to it. And I'm not really aiming for realistic shadows. I'm just kind of making little scribbly marks with a C5 and then a C3 and then blending it all together with a C0. And then we can fix the shading later on if we want, but I just kind of like that kind of blotchy look. The look I was going for was somewhere between realism and non-realism. I don't know what the opposite of realism is. Largely just because I'm not good enough yet to make something look 100% real. And I don't know that that's my style anyway. I'm kind of somewhere in between the realistic world and the dream world. So now I'm going to work on my scene outside the window, and I just wanted it to look like a really cool frosty night outside, and you get a little hint of the moon out there by just leaving the very, very center of our window pane light, and I'm focusing my darkest colors like closest to the window edge and then blending them out. So the colors that I used are B99, B95, B21, and then B00, B000, and then B0000. So the B with the 2 zeros, the B with the 3 zeros, and the B with the 4 zeros. So I used all the B's for my light color in the middle that I kind of want to suggest that there's a moon out there. And then I went over all the entire window scene with some BV000 and BV00 just to give it a little bit of a blue-violet glow out there as well. So now we're going to work on the windowsill, and I'm going to draw in my wood grain with E43, and then I'm going to color over that with some E42 to blend it out a little bit, and then go over the whole thing with E41 to further blend. And that looks good to me. We don't want our background scene to overpower the front scene too much. So I remove my masks, and now I am gonna start coloring the objects. So for the croissant, we're going to use E35, and I'm just gonna follow kind of the underside of the croissant with my darkest shades, and then we're gonna have some lighter shades on the opposite edge, and the very center is gonna have the lightest the lightest coloring, because that's the part that's kind of poofing up close to us, and that would appear lightest in real life, I guess. And so now I'm just darkening up the shadows on the croissant, and this croissant was so much fun to color because of all the little crevices. So if you are trying to learn shading, a croissant I think is a great image to work on, because there are just so many little crevices and so many opportunities to add shadows and light, and it's pretty obvious where the shadows go and where the light part goes. So it's a good this is a good image to just, if you want to practice out your shading skills, to try out. So I'm kind of using all of the E's in the E30 spectrum to make my croissant. My E30 and E31 is in the center. My E31 and E33 and E35 is towards the side closest to the coffee mug, and then I went over everything with a colorless blender just to add some more highlights. For our lemon, our base color is going to be Y11, and then we're going to do our edges with Y19, and then just kind of go all the way through the Y10 spectrum with Y15, and then also Y13 as well. And we're going to color both of the lemons the same way, keeping that little spot, that little kind of oval or almond shape in the center of the lemon the lightest, because we want that to look like it's kind of bulging up. Then I just thought we'd add some little imperfections to our lemons, because I don't know about you, but when I buy lemons, they often have little freckles on them. So I wanted my little lemons to reflect that and look a little bit realistic, even though we're not going for total realism here. We're sort of like in between the two worlds, between real and unreal. All right, so I worked a lot on my shading. just to make sure that I got a nice bright spot in the middle and that my little imperfections were blended in good enough. For the leaves, I'm going to use YG01 for the base, and then YG67 for my dark shadows on the leaf, and then YG23, and then I think we also add a little YG17 at some point, and then let's see what other colors yep, there's the YG17. And the paper that I'm using is Neenah Solar White Classic Crest cardstock in 110-pound weight, and I strongly urge you to use 110-pound weight and not 80-pound weight, because this technique that I'm showing here requires a lot of ink, and you will bleed through the page, and then your images will get kind of blotchy looking if you have too thin of a paper. So if you're home and you are, you know, trying out this technique and you see that your images are a little splotchy, it could be you're using the wrong weight paper, or it could be that you're just, if you are at the 110-pound weight, that you just need to ease up and use less ink, or at least let the ink dry in between your applications of it. Sometimes when that happens to me and I see that the ink is starting to kind of get that messy mottled look, I will just go do something else for 20 minutes and come back after it's dry and start working again, and that usually helps. For the spoon, I just use some toner grays there, and I'm going to use the toner grays also for the little end of the tea bag that is sticking out of our mug. For our mug, we're going to use R30 for our base coat, and then RV34, RV32, and then our darkest shade that'll be coming in a little bit is going to be R56. And I'm just focusing my shading on the bottom part of the mug, and I want it to get lighter the closer that it's getting to that light in the window. Just because this is a pretty big image, and when you have big images, you want, you know, you want your shading to be as simple as possible, because it's going to be difficult to get a blend. So if you are getting a blend, you want to have as few blends as possible. So here, I kind of have an ombre effect going, so I'm only blending my colors together once. Whereas if let's say I had some shading on the top and the bottom of the mug, I would end up with more colors to blend, if that makes sense. And also I think the ombre effect works here because we're imagining that the light is kind of shining through the window and making the top of the mug a little bit lighter than the rest of it and the other items in the picture. Okay, so now we're going to add our snow. I'm using a white Signo Uniball gel pen for this, and I started by putting some big snowflakes, and then we're just going to kind of dot all over the outside of the window scene with some little flecks. So we have different shapes and sizes of snow going on. Now I'm just going to put some little highlights here and there on our little images, and I love the images in this scene. It just makes me think of the perfect, like, cozy winter evening at home, and you just have a cup of tea and a croissant and some nice mint and lemon and cinnamon, and you're just all cozy in your house, and you know, just ready to have a nice, pleasant, relaxing evening. So I really love making this scene. So once we're done with the highlights, then I'm going to just go back over the shadows and kind of smooth them out a little bit, and then add the sentiment. And the sentiment that I chose is a sentiment by Honeybee Stamps that says "Miss You." And I just thought that I only had a small amount of space to put a sentiment, and I thought that "Miss You" just fit the scene just perfectly. So that is my card for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. If you liked the cards at the beginning of the video, then I definitely urge you to give Sandy Allnock's Rainy Days Copic coloring class a try. If you're into watercolor or colored pencils, she also has Rainy Days classes for those two mediums as well. All right, everyone, have a great weekend, and I will see you again in the next video.